Hi everyone. Today we will study homeostasis and cell process. Okay, what would happen to a factory if its supply of raw materials never arrived? Or even what will happen to the factory if it isn't get rid of wastes inside? Yes, I think everyone agree that disaster will be there. Okay, the factory will stop. We cannot work, cannot continue doing the job. This is the same for the cell. So the cell, like a factory, all cell processes should be in should be done in a good base to maintain its homeostasis, so the cell can do the activities and all processes in a regular base without any interruption. So now you can predict what is the meaning of homeostasis. Okay, today we will discuss also transport system in living organisms, cell division, exchange material within a cell like passive and active transport, diffusion and osmosis, and endocytosis, exocytosis. All these cell processes done on a regular base, on a continuous base within the cell. So the cell should uh, keep its homeostasis to maintain doing all these jobs. Okay, so what is homeostasis? Homeostasis is a maintenance of a constant internal state in a changing environment. Uh, we all feel more comfortable when our surroundings are ideal, not too hot, not too cold. So cells are the same way. Should maintain its homeostasis. The internal state should be maintained even in a changing environment, so the cell can do all cells process. Okay, how do organisms maintain homeostasis? In eukaryotes, multicellular organisms, cells and all organisms must work together to maintain the homeostasis. Okay, so a human in cold weather, shivering here, even some contractions to the muscle should be done when you feel cold, and involuntary you are doing shivering. So this is way of doing homeostasis to the cells and in human being. Some animals adapt their behavior to control body temperature. Also, animals in cold weather, some animals go for hibernate. They do hibernate till the cold weather be changed. Trees can show seasonal response to change in the environment, like trees lose their leaves around the same every year. Near to the autumn, you will see trees losing their leaves. Even their color will be changed because chlorophyll breaks down near autumn. So near autumn, when chlorophyll breaks down, the green pigmentation will be replaced with other yellow-orange pigments. So why homeostasis is important? Homeostasis ensures that cells can obtain and use energy, make new cells, exchange materials, eliminate waste. That all these cell processes will be continued even in a changing environment. So this is the importance of homeostasis to ensure that all processes are usually done as usual, even in a changing environment. So as this is an examples for the cell processes. How do cell transport materials? Unicellular organisms exchange materials directly with the environment because it's only one cell. All cells need energy, so that's why they are going for this um, this job in order to carry life process. Multicellular organisms have system that transport material, which is the circulatory system. Circulatory system for the blood vessels, all this cardiovascular system, heart, blood vessel in human, and for the xylem and phloem in plants. So we do have the transport system in human and animals through the cardiovascular system, blood vessels, and in plants, xylem and phloem. Xylem vessel transport water minerals, okay, from the root to the other part of the cell, while phloem vessel transport food, okay, within cell to other plants. So xylem for minerals and water, and phloem for the food. Okay, so how do cells get energy? As you know, for the process of photosynthesis, okay, they do the photosynthesis. Cells need energy to perform cell function. Cells get energy by breaking down materials. This is usually in any cell, but in plants, algae, and some bacteria make their own food by process called photosynthesis. When they make their food by photosynthesis in the presence of sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, so we have three factors here: sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. All together, so plant can do now photosynthesis. What will be the result? The production of oxygen and glucose. This is the result of the photosynthesis process. So animal and human can use oxygen for the inspiration. How do cells get energy? Okay, after the photosynthesis, it will be followed by the cellular respiration. Plants and animals use oxygen during cellular respiration. This oxygen, as a result of the photosynthesis, will be used in the cellular respiration to produce energy. As you see, glucose and oxygen, okay, will be after during the cellular respiration process will produce carbon dioxide and water and will release the energy. And then we will use again carbon dioxide and water with the sunlight to perform photosynthesis. So it is a continuous process between cellular respiration and photosynthesis. As you see, all oxygen around us is made by photosynthesis. So almost all oxygen around us is made by photosynthesis. Animals and plants use oxygen during cellular respiration to break down food. Cellular respiration also produce carbon dioxide, as we mentioned. Okay, so there are two linked processes, photosynthesis and respiration. How do cells divide? Also, this is another example of all the cell processes done by the cell, which need to homeostasis to be done. Cells grow, divide, and die at different rates and for different reasons. Example, cells in the skin are dividing to replace the damaged and died one, but for example, nerve cells cannot divide to produce new one. Cell division in eukaryotes, multicellular organism, is complex. Why? Because before division or cell can divide, DNA should be coupled. The nucleus and the rest of the cell divide to make two new cells after the division. Here is the graph. This is the mother cell inside DNA or chromosomes. Duplication should be done before going for division to have double the number of the chromosomes. Then, as you see, the process of cell division will occur to have finally two identical daughter cells, each one similar to the mother one, the mother cell. So this process called mitosis. So mitosis is the cell division that form two new nuclei that are identical to each other. Two new cells with nuclei that are identical to each other. DNA is packaged as chromosomes in the cell. During mitosis, the chromosomes are separated and genetic material is split, as you see. During mitosis, this split will be done evenly between the new genetically identical cells. So first duplication to the chromosomes or genetic material or DNA. After duplication, we'll go for the division. Then during the division, the split will occur for this genetic material or chromosome to ensure even uh, um, distribution for the genetic material between the two daughter cells. So mitosis will produce double number of the mother cell, will produce cells, each one identical to the mother cell. How do cells exchange material? Another example for the cell processes in need for homeostasis. How do cells exchange materials? We have active and passive transport. See, active transport usually in need for energy. That's why you see ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This ATP indicates that this process in need for energy. So how active transport can be done and passive transport? Cell membrane are semi-permeable, as you know, allowing some certain particles to move into and out of the cell and others will not be allowed. The movement of material across a cell membrane without the use of energy is passive. So passive transport here, no need for energy. So the movement of materials across the cell membrane without the use of energy is called passive transport. It could be a multiple choice question to give you this sentence till here. I will asking you called giving options, passive transport, active transport, diffusion, and blah, blah, blah. So you will choose passive transport, but active transport in need for energy. Okay, active transport in need for energy to be done. We have another definition called diffusion and different than osmosis. Diffusion, here is an example of the tea bag inside the water. So it is the movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration. High concentration particles, molecules in the tea bag transferred to the low concentration, which was the water media, no particles here. So that's why diffusion done. Osmosis is the diffusion of water itself. If the water is through a semi-permeable membrane, many molecules are too large to diffuse through the cell membrane, so some of these molecules enter through protein channels. So diffusion is the movement of the molecules from high to low concentration, but the movement or the diffusion of water from through a permeable membrane, it's called osmosis. Okay, let's see here. Water molecules will transport from high to low concentration, but molecules will be diffused or transported from high to low concentration. So we are talking about particles, molecules, and in osmosis we are talking about the water itself. Because if we talk about the particles here or the molecules, osmosis will be defined the the movement of the particles from the low to high. But when you talk about water from high to low, here we are talking about molecules from high to low. How do cells exchange materials? At some point, the movement of T out of the backstop or slow down considerably. Why? Because it's already all particles already transferred to the low concentration media. So the low concentration media now fully occupied with the material or the particles, molecules from the tea bag. Now, no change will be there. Okay, how do cells exchange materials? How do cells exchange materials? As we see, as we mentioned before, passive transport, no need for energy, but active transport and need for energy to be done. Active transport is the movement of particles against a concentrated gradient and it requires energy. Okay, so don't forget active transport and need for energy. And it is the movement of particles against concentration. But diffusion, passive transport, the same. And no need for um, energy, and no need for energy, and it is the diffusion, like the diffusion. So you can call the diffusion is type of passive transport. Why? Because particles will be transported from the high concentration to the low concentration media without need to energy. This is a diffusion, or you can call it passive transport. But when you go for active transport, this is against concentration, okay, like osmosis. Particles are in need for energy to be transported, okay. What about endocytosis and exocytosis? Also, these are forms of active transport that moves large particle into and out of the cell. Okay, so endocytosis, exocytosis in need for energy. This is an example of active transport. How do cells exchange material? As you see, as we mentioned, these processes are very important, necessary to move material in and out of cell. Definitely, nutrients and good materials in need by the cell should be go for endocytosis or inside the cell, and passive transport outside the cell also could be for the wastes, to get rid of waste. So both active and passive transport are the essential processes in need by the cell. How do cell exchange materials? For the endocytosis in details, the cell comes into contact with particles. So we need the particles to go inside the cell. So the cell now in touch or in contact with the particles. The cell membrane begin to wrap around the particles. This depression done to let the particles be wrapped inside and finally enter the cell. This is endocytosis. But exocytosis, we have particles here in vacuole, and this vacuole become near to the cell membrane, and then it will be open like this to get the materials outside. So endocytosis is a process by which a cell uses energy, surround and enclose a particle in a vesicle to bring the particle into the cell. Exocytosis also is a process by which particles are enclosed in vesicle in a cell and released from the cell. Okay, so what's your homework to do? Your homework is to master all the differences between endocytosis, exocytosis, difference between diffusion and osmosis, active transport and passive transport, okay, and try to practice this solving all the questions on this list, and I hope it was a very good lesson, and no need for to make it very difficult. So it's very easy. Just study it well and it will be very easy to solve any questions. Thank you and see you.